Back live tonight on In Focus, and thanks for staying on. A damning report has been released by Gun Free South Africa and the African Police in Civilian Oversight Forum, titled The State of the Central Firearms Registry in South Africa. The report exposes how police are failing to solve decades-old problems that have got to do with the firearms registry. Let's get some insight into this now, and we are joined in this discussion by the South African Policing Union spokesperson, Lesiba Thobakgale, crime analyst, Dr. Kock, and Gun Free South Africa Director, Adèle Kirsten. And you are part of the conversation on 072-110-5584, soliciting your view on this particular aspect. Should the services of the Central Firearms Registry be outsourced to an independent service provider and not reside within the South African Police Service? As it seems, there are some challenges there in how problems are being addressed. Good evening, Lesiba. Good to have you in the studio.
Good evening to yourself, Mutabo, and to your viewers back at home.
Fantastic. Dr. Kock, as well as Adèle Kirsten, joining us online. Good evening to you, and thank you very much for coming on.
Good evening, Tom.
Good evening, and thanks.
Adèle, let's start with you. How critical is having a CFR, a Central Firearms Register, for gun control in South Africa?
Having an accurate and efficient record-keeping system of who owns what weapon and for which purpose is seen globally as a cornerstone of good gun control. So it's absolutely essential. You can't, if you take the position, which is if you want to get rid of illegal weapons, you need two key interventions. One is you need to mop up and recover and trace the illegal weapons and then push them into destruction. But the second key intervention to reduce the illegal supply of weapons into the illicit market is you really need to strengthen your gun control. And accurate record keeping is absolutely essential to do that.
Yeah. And what has led to the collapse of our record keeping? Except for what we know around the Prinsloo case, what are the other factors that are contributing to the collapse of this record keeping database?
Well, as you said in your introduction, it's a decades-old problems that have caused really serious dysfunction in the registry. And I think from the early days of the Firearms Control Act, you had this dual system of manual record keeping and some electronic record keeping. That's a recipe for corruption to flourish, because in a way it's the right hand doesn't know what the left hand's doing. We've had from about 2010, 2011, certainly public reports emerged of the fraudulent issuing of licenses, of issuing renewal licenses to people who clearly were in breach of the criteria that the Firearms Control Act set. You had things like inappropriate target setting, where there was a backlog in the processing of firearm licenses in 2010. And the then minister said, we promise that we will deal with the backlog of almost 1 million licenses over 6 months. They reached that target. But many officials in the Central Firearms Register acknowledged that they cut corners in order to reach targets. So inappropriate target setting, I think a resistance to kind of putting in place an electronic system, and then tender processes that went awry. With like the Waymark enterprise, which spent over 300 million to Waymark, and they were meant to put in place an electronic system. They never did, and it was written off by the Attorney General as fruitless and wasteful expenditure. So, a range of problems with the Central Firearms Register, really almost since the new law came into place. Yeah. And in a way, I guess one of the questions one needs to ask is this chaotic situation is who does it serve to allow this ongoing chaos in the Central Firearms Registry, which then facilitates corrupt practices and enables the movement of guns into the illegal market.
Before we address that question, who does it serve? We'll get the policing union to respond in a moment. But let's ask this question, Dr. de Kock. How does this chaos affect the crime situation on the ground? How do citizens get affected by this chaotic situation of managing our database of firearms?
Well, this chaotic situation will clearly help the criminals in many, many ways. I mean, if you have a gun, an illegal gun, or a gun that was obtained through corruption within the firearm register offices, then you have power. You see, a gun gives you much more power than any other weapon, say a knife, a sharp object, blunt object, or any of those. I mean, we have seen it this past week. With guns, you can stop lorries, you can stop trucks, and you can burn them, and you can do all kinds of things. So firearms is a very powerful weapon, and if you can obtain them illegally because of the chaos in the system, then, well, clearly that is going to promote crime. We have seen in the past 2 years an explosion of murders. South Africa have never seen a double-digit increase in murders as far as I can remember. But in the past 2 years, the previous financial year and the current financial year, we have seen a increase. Well, not actually the 2 past years, and even now we see a explosion of murders. Yeah.
You know what people say most of the time when we have this conversation, Dr. de Kock, in saying guns result in murder. They say most of the time it's licensed firearms. These are not firearms that are earned through corruption and whatever. These are firearms that belong to people that are being used to murder people. So they're drawing this to say there is no correlation, for example, to say, well, there's chaos at the CFR and the fact that there are murder numbers that are rising. How do you respond to that?
No, I disagree with that. I think many of the guns that are used in murder, for example, and in armed robberies, are actually illegal firearms. There is legal firearms. I mean, when we have social murder between people knowing each other, acquaintances, in many of those cases, it may be legal firearms. But when it is aggravated robbery, and when you find that aggravated robbery, the reaction on the aggravated robbery, in all of those cases, it's illegal firearms. And we have seen that our murders have actually changed. Yeah. When I joined the police in 95, about 80% of our murders were social murders between people knowing each other, husband, wife, children, father, and boyfriend, girlfriend. But today, it's less than 50%. And more than 50% of our murders is as a result of robbery and the reaction on robbery.
And so from someone who watches these stats and gives analysis on them, you would say when you look at the plotting of how the curve is going, there's a direct link to access to illegal firearms in particular and the levels of crime that we see.
Yeah, I definitely think there is a direct correlation. If we look at the Cape Flats, for example, I mean, if we look at the Prinsloo case a few years ago, that weapons that were supplied to the gangs in the Western Cape definitely will increase the levels of violence in the Western Cape. And many innocent people, like children, this week we had a case, are killed because of those firearms.
And Lesiba, I'm sure when I put this question to you, I can almost anticipate your question, your answer. You're going to say it comes down to bad leadership. Is that the sum total of it? Is that why? I mean, there is at least 4 things that are being mentioned here. Resistance to electronic system, this hybrid manual keeping of records, which leads to a whole lot of confusion, inappropriate targets that are set to people. You know, you must release so many licenses, and people just willy-nilly cut corners and they release licenses. And then, of course, the tender process that is always the culprit. If you look at all those issues that are being raised, what do you say is at the heart of it?
Thank you for having us once more. Butabo, it is clear that South Africa has an issue of illegal firearms. Before we could even touch about the CFR. The issue of having illegal firearms that are on the streets and they are not being brought to book. They are not being removed from the streets. It brings crisis because that's what motivates the high levels of crime that we see in this country. Let's say now police officers come across illegal firearms, they arrest somebody who is in possession of the same. It needs to be administered appropriately in terms of systems that are made available. The question goes further. Are the current systems functional in the structure that it is? Because it goes through the SAP 13, which is the exhibit book. From there, then it goes through other processes. But the South African Police Services, for it not to have a system that is functioning clearly in administering those firearms, that is where, when those firearms that have been removed from the streets being found to be illegal or in either way, those firearms, if really there is no clear record keeping thereof to say up until they go for destruction, where is the trail of these firearms? We live in the 4th industrial revolution as it is. The South African Police Services, they don't even need to go and outsource that function because they themselves, they've got capabilities because we've got what we call technological management services, TMS, whom are clear, they've got that mandate to make sure that everything that has to do with the systems within the South African Police Services, like case management, it is functional, it was created by them. Why can't they do the same?
Are people blocking TMS? Are police who are blocking TMS who don't want TMS to do this? They probably, as you're saying, they are capable of doing it, but are the people who are blocking it from happening?
Obviously, if there are people who are blocking it in that manner, then it means there is no political will. The interest of having a system that those firearms can clearly be administered from the time it comes into the SAP 13 in the police station up until the times it goes for destruction. Because there need to be a trail. It needs to be known that this firearm came this way, came that way. Those who are blocking it, they need to be dealt with. They need to be exposed. Why they are not being exposed? Why they are not being dealt with?
Something that is interesting. You mentioned the destruction of firearms. We saw, I think it was in recent weeks, if not 2 or 3 weeks ago, the commissioner destroying some firearms. It was in the Vaal there somewhere. Are you saying to me those that are destroyed there compared to the ones that are still out there that are unaccounted for are much higher?
That is what we are saying as SAPU, that we've got a lot of illegal firearms that are there in the streets and are the ones that are committing these gruesome crimes that we continue to see every day in South Africa. Having a very high number of people who are murdered, having a high number of people who are robbed daily in South Africa, that clearly shows you that most of those crimes, firearms are being used, and those firearms are illegal firearms. So if we really don't start at where the problem is, to say, let us deal with the issue of removing illegal firearms off our streets, of which we have a solution as a union, to say, how do we do that? But up until we go to the point of departure to say, let us have interventions to remove them from the streets before we come to the matter of how are we administering them up until they go through to the ballistics, up until then they are to be destroyed. Because they don't, if it is illegal, at the end of the day, it needs to be it needs to be destroyed at the end of the day.
But are you denying police involvement in firearms smuggling?
There could be cases that are there.
There could be?
There could be cases that are there.
Just we know one. Are there others that we don't know of?
No, what we are saying, there could be, in every organization, there are rotten potatoes. We cannot deny such a fact. But it is not majority of police officers who are doing that. Because when you look at the prisons now as we speak, the prisons are full and they are even overflowing. They want to release even some of them because who put those prisoners there? Police officers, dedicated police officers whom have taken the oath, and they are following the very same oath to make sure that they serve the interests of the Republic and its inhabitants. They have made sure that those perpetrators, they are arrested and they have been brought to book. That is why we see prisons being full in that manner. Where there are rotten potatoes, we need to isolate them and deal with them. But we cannot come with a blanket approach to say police are responsible for smuggling illegal firearms.
Let's take a break. We'll get Adèle and Dr. Kock to respond to that as we continue taking your views as well. 072-110-5584. Dr. Prince will stay with us. Don't go anywhere. Adèle, stay with us. And Lesiba is staying with us here in the studio. And we'll take your WhatsApp messages as well. Should the services of the Central Firearms Registry be outsourced to an independent player? We'll get your views in a moment. Stay with us. Back live with you tonight on In Focus, and thanks for staying on. Conversation just getting started, getting some of your views as well coming through on 072-110-5584. This is on a report that recently revealed a lot of corruption, maladministration, and inefficiencies as far as the Firearms, Central Firearms Registrar is concerned. We're asking you the question, should this be given to independent players? As generally calls of that nature tend to be made when the government systems fail to do what they are supposed to do. South African Policing Union spokesperson Lesiba Thobakgale still with us, Dr. Kirsten Kock, crime analyst, as well as Adèle Kirsten from Gun Free South Africa. Adèle, let's come to you and answer some of these issues that Lesiba is raising. He says, before we even get to speak about the database, how about the many firearms that are in the streets that are unaccounted for? Maybe that's where we should start. But also he mentions something like TMS, which is more than capable of doing what needs to be done as far as moving us into the fourth industrial revolution. But saying it's not a majority of police that we should be worried about. It's a few of them that maybe certainly the law can sort them out.
Mm-hmm. So, Thabo, I think, we're in agreement that removing illegal guns from circulation is absolutely critical to dealing with our problem of violent crime and high levels of gun-related murder. We need to remember 31 people are shot and killed every single day. And so removing illegal weapons is absolutely critical. But you need to turn off the tap, which means you need to strengthen control over your legal stock. So you need to do both of those things in order to be effective. And I think both SAPU and Gunfree in the recent past have called for the establishment of specialist firearms units, because you're only going to get this right if you have an intelligence-driven, coordinated approach to it. So it's definitely about removing the illegal firearms. But you have to, firearms, it's a legal, legitimate trade. And across the world, and in fact, it's part of our global agreements, you are required as a state to have an accurate and efficient record-keeping system. So you need to be able to do both.
And is that something that you believe could be better done by somebody who is independent outside of the SAPS?
Well, to talk about the SAPS's own internal management, in April, it was just announced that a new tender to establish an electronic database in the registry was awarded to Provident Software Solutions. So again, we back to the situation where a tender's been given to an outside company to put in place to basically digitize the system. The amount that it cost has not been made transparent. So we would urge that the Minister of Police make public what this has cost, and that there are quarterly reports to Parliament about the progress in putting in place this new system. So, that's fait accompli. So it's already there. And I think I would urge certainly SAPU to try and engage the Minister and the National Commissioner on, what the status of this contract is now. As far as we know, it's done. It was awarded by CETA, and it was announced in April. And so, that's already done. In terms of what the report shows, or what we try and explore, is given the decades of dysfunction in the Central Firearms Register, our question is, what can we learn from other countries? And basically, there were three other possibilities, only in a handful of countries. Yeah. The only country that we could find that entered into a private-public partnership was the Dominican Republic. But I think certainly global experts really caution against a public-private partnership, because the profit motive is much stronger than sort of a commitment to community safety, which we would see as a key function of SAPS. There was also then the idea of devolving the authority to a kind of subnational or provincial or local level. And in countries like Switzerland, it worked well, but this is a country with what's called high levels of functional, indices. That's sort of low levels of corruption, capacitated state, etc. So it's not sure if it would be appropriate for a country like South Africa. And then the third option is this idea of an independent authority, which would report to the police. So it's not like it's completely devoid and separate from the police, but it's an independent authority that would have experts working in the area of firearms control, having some kind of advisory capacity. But, this is exploratory research. It's trying to open up the question of how can we do better than what we're currently doing. Yeah. So in a way, if SAPU has other ideas, Gunfree would be really keen for SAPS, either through the union or through the minister, to really have much more detailed discussion on what are the options and what's available, what works, what could we explore in this country. And it's all it's really geared towards reducing gun availability, because we know when you reduce the number of guns in circulation, you reduce gun deaths. So really that's the central purpose of this research report, is to explore solutions to try and reduce the number of guns moving into the illicit market. Because we have to remember is, on average, 24 guns are lost and stolen every single day. So where do those illegal guns come from? They come from the legal market. Most guns start their life off as a legal entity. Yeah. So you have to...
Are they lost and stolen, or as per the report, the designated firearms officers are being paid bribes to allegedly facilitate all sorts of kind of corrupt dealings?
Sorry, Tabu. So I mean, we know right from 2011 there were investigations into corrupt practices in the registry, but also all the way along the chain of firearms management. So you had these training institutes issuing training certificates through a bribe when someone paid 1,000 rand rather than actually doing the training. And we need to remember that firearms, the trade in firearms, is very lucrative. And when you have a situation like that, you know that corruption is a big risk. And you may be never going to completely get rid of it. Yeah. But you need to put in place systems that reduce the risk for corruption. So you have to take a systemic approach rather than this idea that there are a couple of rotten apples and you need to remove them. It's the system that's faulty. Yeah. The system. The weak system enables someone like Prinsloo to, jippo the system. Right. So you have to look at the entire chain. The registry is the central part of it. Right. But there's corruption all the way along the chain, from the point of manufacture right through to the point of destruction. So you have to take a really holistic and systems approach to trying to fix the system.
Dr. Kock? How do you fix the system? I mean, if the challenge we're dealing with here is coming from the designated firearms officers at police stations, because as Lesiba says, that's the first point of entry where firearm is going to be handed out and then registered in a book. yes, we can maybe get a contractor to come in at the level of managing the database, but at that point where that firearm is being handed over, and if there's corruption right there, we're having challenges. How did you do it back in 95?
Well, yeah, I joined the police in 95. I was not part of that system or the firearm register. I had a different role. But I must say there's constant reference to 2011, 2012. And it seems things went terribly wrong on all aspects of policing since then to today. I mean, we can take any aspect of policing. Vehicles, telephones, you can just mention anything. It seems everything went wrong. And even with our crime increased from 2011-12 terribly to where we are today. Now, the problem is corruption. And it's not only corruption in the firearm register, it is corruption everywhere, in all departments, but especially in the police, in some areas. Now, I've listened, and I want to say here, I want to put a footnote here, I think there's very, very good police officers. I'm even involved in policing today in the sense of from the community side, at the CPF side. There are fantastic police officers who are really going out of their way, even giving their lives to help and control crime in South Africa. I have to say that for SAPU, for everybody. But the fact of the matter is, unfortunately, South Africa have a major corruption problem. And that goes with organized crime. And unfortunately, in the firearm, in this whole business of taking illegal firearms away from the street and then keeping track up till the point where they are destructed, and even firearms which are voluntarily handed in, and also those firearms which are taken during certain raids and so on. All of this, you will find corruption, because the price of firearms are very, very high. If I can provide firearms to organized crime, to the gangs and to all of these, I can get a lot of money out of it. I mean, Prinsloo was a very good example of that. And I'm certain Prinsloo was not the only example. There are many other examples. Even when I was in the police, from 95 to about 2013, there were stories of police officers at station level which rented out police firearms. I'm not even talking of civilian firearms which was handed in, or which were or illegal firearms which were taken from the street and now they were in the police. I'm talking of firearms like R4s and R5s which are used in especially CIT robberies, truck hijackings, those type of things, which were rented out from the police. So unfortunately, corruption is a major problem in South Africa, and I think it links up with our materialism. I think we have become a very materialistic society, and money is everything.
Sure.
You even buy your way into the police by bribing people, who employ civilians into the police. I mean, we know of that. So that's a major problem. We have to get rid of corruption, and then many of our problems will be solved.
Lesiba, of those three options, one is the public-private approach, the one is devolution, and the other one is, of course, the independent authority. Which one would you be more prone to support, or maybe you've got a fourth one or even a fifth option that we could pursue?
From our perspective, I think maybe before I touch that part, we are glad that Kirsten is agreeing with us in terms of establishment of firearms unit, because that will assist us with all those issues that we are having in removing firearms from the streets. We need to be open-minded, all of us, and have a clear dialogue when it comes to how do we remedy the situation. Because if somebody comes with suggestions to say, these are the means that we could use in order to make sure that the management of firearms, which comes into the police stations or into the system of the police, it can be managed in a better way, where there's accountability, where there's transparency. All of those options, they should be welcomed. We just need to sit on the table and agree to say which ones can work for ourselves. But as for tendering, to give others tenders to say, do this for us, tender does not work in cases like this. We have seen when it came to the issue of forensic science laboratory, where there were issues with the company that had a tender with them. When they closed their system, subs could not get into the system. So we don't want a situation again. History must teach us to what has happened before, where now that company will say, no, we are not paid, or there's any disputes that arises from there, then they close the tap. We cannot play with the issue of firearms and really look into other, put it on tenders, because there's a whole lot of factors that are involved. So we are saying that any option that people have, we can do it in-house. What we are sponsoring is that let us sit around the table. Let us look at what systems can we put in place in terms of those that we have under TMS, as we have highlighted, to say, okay, if there's an oversight that can look, who can now be able to monitor the very system that is being run by the South African Police Services. If that is an option for us to look into, we could look into that, but not to go and take that responsibility. It's a great responsibility, Butabo. It is a great responsibility. It involves the lives of people. Firearms, it involves the lives of the people. It involves the future of this country. So to take it and put it in somebody's hand in that manner, whereas it is the responsibility of subs, we believe it will be irresponsible. That is why it has to be in-house. Let us look at how do we manage. Don't just throw the baby with the bathtub, whereas you can deal with other issues to make sure there's accountability, there's also transparency.
Let's get what our viewers are saying. 072-110-5584 on Twitter. These are your thoughts tonight to our conversation. Jomo Rasiwela from Joburg said, we can't control corruption in the police and traffic. It will be a waste of time and resources. It is better to continue under the South African Police Service, but tighten regulations like other countries. Good evening, Mr. Dluli. If we say we want a gun-free society, we are technically declaring that only criminals must be armed, because they will never surrender their guns, and all buses or businesses, shall I say, will be in trouble. Anonymous saying, evening again, unfortunately it is a fact that robbers are not concerned about civilians protecting themselves, and as a consequence, murders and house robberies are on the increase. The police are not able to run the CFR. It is very clear. Just look at the corruption and time it takes to get a legal license for a law-abiding citizen. So some varying views there, but you want to just summarize what some of them are saying. Some of them are saying tighten the screws. Others are saying the system doesn't even allow you to get a license on time because of the corruption in the process.
Yeah, I think the issue of corruption should not cloud everything. But the challenge that we have with corruption in this country is that we don't deal with the corrupter and the corrupted. We deal with only one party. If indeed in South Africa we want to get rid of corruption anywhere, in any department, at any level, we need to deal with both. If one is found to say you have been corrupted, then the one who corrupted you, they must also face the law. By so doing, those who have the edge to go and corrupt others, then they will stop doing it. But now they have the edge to do it because they know if the issue comes out, only the one who is a police officer, as an example, who the one who's responsible as a DFO administering firearms, is the one who will be dealt with accordingly. The very same one will come and testify there that I've given him so much and so on. But for us to root out corruption, we need to deal with both the corrupter and the corrupted. By so doing, people will not go and corrupt others. And indeed, we agree with him to say, let us deal with what we have. Let us tighten where the system is not working for us. Let us look at the system and improve it as well. But we also have a crisis of firearm amnesty.
Yeah.
It is a crisis because people are told that, no, bring those firearms. We're not interested in what you have done. Tina, we want those firearms. Bring them here. And once they come, it means that the crimes that occurred, that were committed using those firearms, it is not assisting us. We are not able to trace them back.
Yeah. So
and no one accounts
to it.
As a
technique to get rid of the many AK-47s that were hidden somewhere there during the time of the struggle, that's the option that they went for.
It does not help, Butabo, for us to say bring it in that manner, whereas at the same time, those very same firearms killed people. They were used in robberies. They were used in very hideous crimes. Yeah. And no one is to account for it. Because if there is crime that has been committed, one has to account. Because all of us, we are to abide, we are to follow the law and the prescripts of the law in this country. So we are saying that the issue of amnesty, we need to look into it. Because people can be encouraged to do so because they know there is no consequences. They can just go, use illegal firearms, commit those crimes. The next thing, they go, they put those ones. And yet they still have others. They're just surrendering those ones that they've utilized in those crimes where they know that they will be traced because there is something that was done thereafter. So we need to look into the issue of amnesty. Politicians, they need to stay away from declaring the issue of amnesty because we will not get into the bottom of really dealing with removing firearms from our streets, illegal firearms from our streets.
Out of time, completely. Adèle Kirsten, much appreciated. Thanks for coming on. Dr. Krista Kock and Lesiba Thobakgale, thank you for coming into the studio and thank you for your engagement tonight on our social platforms.